it's been 5 years since the release of Change the World, and obviously a lot has happened since then. It's COVID. So, tell me how this new record, Chasing Euphoria, came together.
Well, we were doing some writing along the way. When we finished Change the World, COVID hit, all the touring plans went out the window, and then after that, we just kind of took a little bit of a break while everything just sorted itself out because we kept rebooking and rebooking tours, and it just became a real annoyance because it kept getting canceled every time we tried to book something again. So basically, um, we started writing songs. I don't know. I would say about a year after that, in like 2021, 2022, around that time. But then we just didn't have a goal and a deadline to finish it, quite honestly. So Frontiers Records was in touch with us last summer around June or July, and we basically just had a call where we said, all right, let's set a deadline. We made it December because without a deadline, we just would never sit down and actually do the work. So at the end of the day, it was a great thing that they intervened and kind of kicked us into high gear, and that was our job for the next 6 months was to get that thing done. So we finished up the writing, started recording, spent about 3 months recording it, and by the time January rolled around, we were done at the beginning of this year.
How did you keep busy during the pandemic besides working on the album? Were you one of those people that was like, oh no, I'm just gonna watch YouTube all day, or were you actually doing stuff more like, productive, like on side gigs or stuff like that?
Yeah, you know what? It was every musician was trapped at home. So it was actually one of the busiest times of my life because being a producer and a recording engineer, one of my main gigs is mastering records. So everybody was in the studio recording because they couldn't go out and do anything else. So I'd say about 6 months after that, when people had time to finish their recordings, I'd never been busier than doing all the studio work that I was doing. So if anything for me, it was a super busy time and never really a lull in the activity. And I think that's kind of why I didn't really focus on Harem Scarem that much during that time, just busy working on other projects and had so many people reaching out to me and doing other kinds of work.
Interestingly enough, I watched a different interview with Pete, and he said he was busy too during the pandemic since he's a producer as well. Guess everything
Yeah.
is online.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we were all like we all work together anyway, even when it's not on Harem Scarem projects. So it's a little bit bizarre because it's not like if we're not doing Harem Scarem that we don't interact or we don't see each other or talk or whatever, because there's always an ongoing project that probably involves one or two or three or even all of us from a studio perspective or production or just working on other people's records.
Gotcha. Alright, so going back to the new record, first of all, I love how the record sounds. I love rock music with lots of melody, but yet it's not too polished or not too slick, and I think the new record fits that description perfectly. So, in your opinion, how important is melody when it comes to songwriting?
Yeah, I mean, um, it's hard to, draw a line down the middle and say it's 50-50. But I mean, when those two worlds collide, when you have an interesting musical idea and you can marry it together with an interesting melodic idea, but I would also throw in something lyrically that, people can kind of hang their hat on or at least get a sense of that it has some meaning to it. So I would say those three components are the three elements that we strive for when we're doing writing a harem scarum song, making a record as a whole. And the older we get, the more we focus on lyrics and melodies. But then again, like I would be lying if I said that the songs that excite me the most are the ones that have a musical foundation that's more interesting than just playing straight chords, you know? Because if you're just looking at straight chord progressions, musically it can get a little bit boring, or it's the same old, same old. It's not like we have a monopoly on some special chord structures. We're all using the same chord structures that everyone's been using for, literally hundreds of years, making music. And when you get into the pop world, it even gets shrunk down to very basic chord progressions, if I'm being honest. And then it's how you utilize those progressions and integrate riffs or parts, tempos, and then obviously melodies and lyrics on top of it. So those are the things that we're kind of keeping in mind when we're creating ideas and just shaping songs in general.
Speaking of age, I noticed that you had quite a bit of a rasp in your voice when you were younger, and I feel like that has slowly slipped away as time has passed by. So, how have you learned to change or adapt with your current voice with these new records?
Well, you know what? I think out of just kind of sheer, not wanting to lose my voice. I mean, I'm trying to sing a little bit cleaner live than I used to because I would yell more than sing. And a lot of the songs require more of a lighter singing touch, especially the earlier stuff. But there was a time period where it was all angst and more raunch to it. Like even the popular songs, when the choruses would hit, I would try to belt it out, where I'm still doing that to a large extent, but it's a little bit more controlled. So you are right. There is a more controlled element to my singing style than ever before. And I think it's a necessity as you get older not to lose your voice and just physically be able to do what you do. I still have the same range, if not better than ever, because I've figured out how to sing better. And so I think they kind of go hand in hand with a bit of I don't know, changing your technique to have more longevity. And as you get older, I think you just got to be a little bit more careful with your approach, like of I'm not 20 getting out there and I'll just be able to recuperate in a few hours. So, getting out on the road and playing 20 songs a night, it's quite a task, especially when you're singing rock songs. They're typically in a high range, higher than your normal speaking voice. So it's a challenge for anybody, and the older you get, just the harder it gets typically from a physical standpoint. But from a singing standpoint, it's all technique based and you should be able to figure it out. And I think I have to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I like what you said about like preserving your voice because it made me think about two things. One is I heard about when Ian Gillan was in Black Sabbath and how he would just scream the songs, and then in between songs he would still scream with the audience. And then looking back at it now, I mean, he still sounds decent for his age, but
Yeah.
he's not singing the those high notes like he used to. So it
Yeah.
made me think about that, and it also made me think of Def Leppard when I don't know if you've seen the In Around show with, during the Hysteria era, but he would sometimes yell and interact with the audience that way, and then listening back to it now, I was like, oh, I really wish he didn't do that. So I totally see where you're coming from when it
Yeah.
comes to preserving your voice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's those little things. And what's actually the worst is talking loudly at a gig or in a club before the show, after the show. It's probably worse abuse than the actual singing is because it's relentless and it can go on for hours. And you may be stressing yourself out singing a 3, 4 minute song, but typically it's 3 or 4 minutes. And if you can pace yourself and you know what you're doing, should be fine. But if you're in a bar and it's noisy and people are trying to talk to you and you're just doing that for hours and hours. That's what I've found the most fatiguing because even in my natural voice, you can hear it. There's a rasp to it. And it's technically not a good thing. vocal cords are rubbing against each other, and it's not a natural, good way to even speak or maintain any kind of good vocal health. So I have to be extra careful not to talk too much, which is totally fine by me when I'm out on the road and I'm doing shows. And but you're right, there aren't a lot of older singers that have the same tone and range that they used to when they were younger. Uh, Glenn Hughes is one of them that does just sounds unbelievable at his age, and I believe he's in his 70s. So it's yeah, it's few and far between the singers, but you hear some of them, like Motley Crue. Not to disparage anybody, but like it's just a function of getting older. And but John Bon Jovi, some of these guys have completely lost their voice, and so when I hear that or I see it, I'm mindful of it, and I just want to be careful. But so far, so good. Fingers crossed. I'm able to kind of pull it off.
I can go on and on about talking about singers that just don't sound like what they used to, but I'm not going to bore you with all that. So, now, I wanted to talk about a couple of songs on the record. One of them is Gotta Keep Your Head Up, which I believe Darren Smith sings. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Darren's singing that one. When we were writing the record, it's been a while since Darren has sung lead vocals on a song on a Harem Scarem record, but you may know or not know, but Darren's a great lead vocalist in his own right. He's a singer in Red Dragon Cartel with Jakey Lee, and so he's started out as our drummer, but has also kind of had a career as a lead singer as well. So he's one of the original members of the band, and whenever we can include him, and we have for many many years now. There was a time where we weren't working together just because he was off doing his own thing, like I just said. Um, but we've been able to manage schedules to the point where when we go do a Harem Scarem thing, Darren has been involved. So anyway, it was kind of a no-brainer to kind of get him to sing a song on the record. And when we were writing it, I really heard him doing it. I thought, oh, this would be perfect for him. It's right in his range and his wheelhouse. It's something he can really dig into and do a good job with. And I'm glad he did.
And I love how positive the lyrics are. That, especially in this current world where it seems a lot of music is all about, not to say it's people want to bring you down, but it seems a lot of that positivity is missing these days. So I really like the lyrics, especially. What was your thought process when writing that song?
Well, I mean, it kind of the whole record in general. We have found that on songs that are like in a major key or up tempo or have a poppy element to it, we do like the songs with a positive message, and that's kind of been the feedback over the years. Is that it wasn't lost on us that over the years people would comment on the songs with a positive message. So we didn't really even know that when we first started writing songs, but oddly enough, those were the ones that people liked the most. And I actually did a little bit of research on it once, and found that like there's been studies shown that people just like positive messages more than, and I'm talking in general terms of pop music, not death metal or anything like that. Obviously, genre specific music that needs a certain style and edge to it, you're not going to write happy lyrics, or that would be weird, right? So with us, it's the same thing. We're trying to match the melodic sense of the song with a lyric that fits that emotion. And then I do go out of my way to try and write lyrics that kind of have a message of positivity somewhere in it, even if it's, a little bit of a backhanded way of getting at it. There's themes that, end well, but it might be surrounding a little bit of a story with, some good and negative, like good and positive things in it. So, but from a song title and theme perspective, there we try to write some positive things.
Yeah, I've grown to appreciate more positive songs, especially now working full time and there's just a lot of stress that can happen at work. So I've really grown to appreciate positive songs that give you hope that it's going to get better. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
And moving on, I also want to talk about Better the Devil You Know. I know it had a video. Was that a single?
Yes, it just
Okay.
came out um maybe a week ago. So yeah, brand new video out for that one. Chasing Euphoria. There's another video, and there's a lyric video for a song called Reliving History that was kind of the first teaser track. But the real first single was Chasing Euphoria, and the second one was Better the Devil You Know.
Yeah, so talk more. Can you talk more about Better the Devil You Know?
Yeah, I mean, that was we probably started that about 4 years ago. Same with Chasing Euphoria. So that idea's been kicking around for a while. Started with the chorus, passed it along to Pete. Pete started to put together some musical ideas for the intro and verse and stuff like that. But kind of what we were just talking about, with regards to a bit of a weird theme there, where you're contemplating what direction to go in, and sometimes the grass always looks greener on the other side, but in this case, it's just kind of like an internal struggle of like, better the devil you know or the angel that you seek. It's kind of like, when like anything in life, when you're given options and you have to make decisions, careful of the ones that you make.
I figured that would have an interesting meaning behind that because considering how much the title just really spoke to me. So I had a feeling there was some deep meaning going on between that song, which now that you mention that totally makes sense now.
Yeah.
Are there any other songs that stand out to you on the record?
Well, with the title track, we named the album that on purpose. We thought it was one of the stronger songs on the record, and I think kind of encapsulates like everything about Harem Scarem throughout the years. If you were to pick like what is Harem Scarem or what does it sound like, I think that would be a good um marker of where we've been and where we've ended up, like so there it's in a minor key, but it's a poppy singable chorus. It's a big chorus. Um, and it has a lot of interesting musical things from a guitar perspective. So I think it ticks all the boxes of what you would call, yeah, a typical Harem Scarem song. So that is a reason it's the title track off the record as well. And we wanted to name the record that. We thought it was a cool album concept as well, because it is what we're all doing. We're all chasing something in one way or another.
True to that. Yeah. So, Harem Scarem, they've gone through a few musical changes throughout the band's career, especially since the debut came out in 1991 during the rise of grunge rock. Flash forward to now where rock and roll is more for the underground folks. Do you guys consciously pay attention to what's trending at all these days, or at this point you just focus on writing great songs that speak to you rather than what's popular in the charts?
Yeah, I mean, I can honestly say, we're products of, the music that we listened to growing up, especially in the mid to late 80s, being a teenager at that time. I was heavily influenced by what was on the radio, and oddly enough, it was rock. So when Bon Jovi and Whitesnake are in the top 10 at radio in the 80s, like that was pop music. So obviously pop music today is extremely different from that. But to put it in perspective, it's like we're kind of just listening to what was popular at the time. And now it's become this underground kind of subgenre of rock, even melodic rock, to call it that. But, when we were starting to write songs and make records, we were listening to Def Leppard and Whitesnake and Bon Jovi. So, from a songwriting perspective, but when grunge came out, it killed any band that looked or sounded like us, right? Fortunately, we did well in Europe and Asia, and we continued to have a career. But a lot of the other bands that were signed in North America, specifically America, just their careers were over. So we were super lucky in one sense, not so lucky from a timing perspective of what we were doing and when we were doing it. But and then to add to that, Pete and I, we really liked a lot of the grunge stuff because I like a lot of heavier music. I, grew up again listening to Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and those were some of my favorite bands growing up. So Alice in Chains specifically, Soundgarden, like Chris Cornell's voice, but Alice in Chains was a huge influence on us, believe it or not. But we knew that we weren't them and we weren't trying to be them. So, to you can't help but be influenced by the things that you hear. So at that time, we were writing some darker, heavier stuff, a little bit off the beaten path. But we were all at our core melodic songwriters. And so we went through all those phases and we kind of came back. And then we did even like what you could call power pop records, in the late 90s, early 2000s. But then after getting all of that out of our system, probably in the mid, like 2013, we did a re-record of our Mood Swings record. And then after that, we really decided that if we're going to make a Harem Scarem record, that it was going to sound like a traditional Harem Scarem record. And that's kind of what you've heard for the last four records, is that's, I think, what our fan base kind of first heard, and that's what they like about us. And so when we make a Harem Scarem record, I think we'll keep going down that path. But that very difficult to do after 16 records of not repeating yourself. But we definitely have a formula to what we do and how we write and the sound of the records that we make. We're not under any delusion that we're reinventing the wheel or we're doing something special, but the task is always to try to write a great song. So that'll never get old. People like to hear great songs. So that's what we're trying to do. Even though the vehicle or the wrapper that it's wrapped in is 40, 50 years old at some point, right?
I I'm just curious. Are there any pop artists that you actually do listen to? Kind of sounds like you're more of a rock guy. Are there any pop artists that you're influenced to or don't
You
mind
know what?
listening to at all?
You know what? I appreciate great songs. I don't really care what the genre is. And as a mastering engineer, I'm working on different styles of music all the time. I'm working on a Frank Sinatra box set right now, So anything from literally like death metal to jazz to Frank Sinatra. I do a lot of rock stuff because I know a lot of rock producers and mixers and engineers. So I'd say the bulk of my work is still in the rock vein, but yeah, I've done some very esoteric rock punk bands, like I said, to metal, and then all the way up to very poppy things right now. And when you say listening to it, I very rarely just sit down and listen to music for enjoyment because that's all I do all day long. I really do. Like when I leave, the studio, I do just want to watch Netflix or just chill out. It's not about listening to music for enjoyment. It's been like that for a long, long time because again, if that's what you do all day long, it's really tough to get excited about it. And I think also a function of getting older is that you're not in a clique. It's not like I hang out with my friends and we listen to music or talk about the cool new thing. Kind of like a working guy now, but I just happen to work in the music business, right? So, yeah, nothing really that I could say, oh, I've got this record and I love it. I mean, my kids are, 26 and 28 years old. So like, if I'm listening to what they're listening to, if I'm on a car ride and I'm listening to Billie Eilish or Lana Del Rey or, something like that. I mean, I would say, yeah, I mean, Billie Eilish would be one of the last things that I actually sat down and listened to, at length and tried to digest it and understand what's going on. And yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of talented artists. There always has been, always will be, and that get hoisted into the top 10 artists of the world. And typically they're the younger, people or younger artists. Like there aren't a lot of 50-year-old artists breaking through that are, in the Hot 100 in the top 10. They're typically younger and new. That's what the industry does. It kind of brings in the next thing, right? So inevitably, no matter what you're doing, if you're 20, by the time you're 30, 40, 50, that's going to be old. And but that doesn't mean there isn't a giant fan base that was, into that. So our fan base now, when we go play live, they're our age and older. So it's weird. We've always been playing to people our age, and we still are. Some young people coming along for the ride that like the nostalgia of it and think rock music is cool. And the internet being what it is and people finding us, we still like we laugh. Like we see comments sometimes going, I just heard you for the first time, And meanwhile, we've been doing this for close to 40 years. But people are finding us on YouTube, Spotify, whatever. So that's really cool, and that didn't exist 20, 25 years ago.
Just checking in. How are you on time right now?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so
Yeah,
a couple more questions then.
yeah.
You kind of talked about how you're a working man and listening to music is all you do for, well, it's mostly what you do for your job. So I was wondering, given how difficult it is being a musician today, I mean, you guys got lucky because you started out in the late 80s, early 90s, but considering how hard it is to be a musician nowadays, if you weren't in the music business, what would you do for, well, what would you think you'd be doing career-wise?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've literally never had a real job. I worked in a music store during high school, around my school schedule. And that's the closest I came to a real job. Everything else has been music related, and even that obviously is music related. Nobody would have hired a long-haired freak like me at the time if it wasn't in a music store. So at the end of the day, like I really don't know. There was no plan B for me, and at that time, it seemed like something that you could do. Like even if you were in a bar band and you weren't writing songs, but you were touring, I had friends that just played music in bar bands, but they could do 200 shows a year. And if everybody left with, a couple $100, wasn't a bad living actually. And then there were, recording acts that were doing the same thing, but making really great money. So um, I got a taste of it early. I made my first record when I was 15 years old and had a record deal. And then Harem Scarem put that together when I was like 18 or 19. So in a sense, it's all I've ever known. And so there was never a moment where I was contemplating, well, what else would I do? I've always kind of had a business sense, and started buying real estate like about 15, 20 years ago. Got into that, but just as a side thing of just hey, this makes sense. I like doing this, kind of something that I can dabble with on the side and have fun with. So I'll go real estate developer. I'll go with that one, although I'm not.
Hmm. Okay, real estate. Nice. All
Yeah.
right. So, are you working on any other projects alongside Harem Scarem at the moment? I mean, you're a record producer, but do you have like anything else that you're currently working on?
Uh, Before we talked, I'm putting together kind of like remixing. It's a weird thing now. Technology allows you to take like a stereo mix and dissect it. So you can rebalance the individual elements inside a stereo mix, which you've never been able to do before. So I've been spending a lot of time doing that on records. And I'm doing it for a Jimmy Jamison live record. And remember, Jimmy Jamison was a singer for Survivor. He passed away, I think, 9 or 10 years ago. And so he's got a live record back from the archives. There's a reissue label that is putting it out, and I think Frontiers Records is actually ultimately going to put it out at some point this year. So I was working on that this morning. Also doing some Frank Sinatra this morning. That's a whole box set, 5 albums of that, and I recently did a Wang Chung live record. Remember, Everybody Have Fun Tonight? Dance Hall Days, that kind of stuff. And yeah, just projects all the time.
Well, nice to see you're keeping busy.
I am. Yeah.
Alright, so I'll wrap this up real quickly. Is there anything you want to add to this interview? I mean, besides that, the new album comes out April 25th.
Yeah, I mean, that would really be it in a nutshell. I mean, if, um, people can check out our Facebook, page for or any socials for info. We leave for Spain on our first shows in Spain in Europe on the 24th, and then Portugal, Italy, London, England, Germany, south of France, Belgium, Amsterdam, then The Hague or something like that. So anyway, I encourage anybody to go check out the live dates. If you're in any of those places, come by and see us. We'll be on the road.
Hey, nice. So,
Awesome.
again, Chasing Euphoria comes out April 25th through Frontiers Music. Alright,
Yep.
so yeah, perfect. Alright, thank you, Harry, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay, we'll talk soon.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.